NFL, the schedule is out, 112 days away from kickoff. Graziano has put together some overreactions. Dan, if I said the Cowboys are going to have an unhappy holiday season, is that an overreaction?
It's not. Cowboys have a Week 10 bye, which is nice, but then after that they play a Monday night game. Then they have a short week game against Philly, an even shorter week game against the Chiefs. They got a short week game on Christmas at Washington. The travel schedule and the rest schedule for the Cowboys in the second half of their season is extremely challenging, regardless of opponents. And by the way, those are some pretty good-looking opponents.
They have 4 Thursday night games or Thursday games this season, which is the first time any team has ever had that. When you see these schedules come out and you see it backloaded like that, and we take into account they bring in George Pickens and all that, what does it mean for the Cowboys?
I mean, it means the Cowboys need to start this season playing extremely well. They need to start at a high level. They need to start by winning football games. There will be no moral victories for Shoddy and this team early on in the season. When you truly look at this roster and the way they've built themselves offensively, this team can be extremely explosive, extremely competitive. They need to shore up some things on the defensive side of the football. But if they don't start early and if they're not winning early, we know how the cycle of what the voices outside of this building will say and the pressure that can be on this team.
Let me give you their first 4 games. They open, we all had seen that already. They open on that Thursday night at Philadelphia, the defending champions, and they're home to the Giants, then at Chicago, and then they get Green Bay. What will the Cowboys be after 4 games?
I want to say 2-2. I want to say 2-2. Which, listen,
that'd be pretty good.
That'd be pretty good. I think the biggest thing for the Dallas Cowboys, listen, when Dak Prescott plays a full season, they're pretty much banked for 9 wins.
Exactly.
At minimum. Okay. I think for them, the number one thing I said for the Dallas Cowboys, the offensive line needs to come together. They had no running game last year, and I think Dak Prescott operates best when they have a really good running game to go along with what they have on the outside. That they need to show up on the defense, the rush defense. But like RC said, they got to get out of the gates quick because that back half, boy, it could be troublesome.
The trade they made for George Pickens really opened up my eyes. That was the aggressive move. They didn't do it in free agency. They did it a different way.
When was the last time the Dallas Cowboys ever made an aggressive move like that? That's what we've been talking about with them for years. It's like, where's the move?
It sort of had to be laid up on a silver platter, and it was, with George Pickens being moved from the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it also finally showed that this team has a sense of urgency in trying to win and trying to do something different. But it doesn't matter if this team is 500, like Graziano said, after the bye week, it's going to be extremely difficult to win some of those games, not having rest, playing against good football teams in that travel schedule. You have to have some momentum headed into that.
So the things that we were looking for yesterday, which teams got sort of favorable and unfavorable? That brings us to the Lions. If I were to say
So let's talk to real trade candidates then. Let's stick in that pass rushing room. How about Sam Williams? There's complications here. Make no mistakes about that. The investments that have been placed at that room could put Williams on the outside looking in. I thought he kind of wasn't as good in 2023 as he was in 2022. And what was hopefully going to be a, year 3 breakout for Sam Williams never happened this past season. And now they've kind of stacked players on top of him. Obviously, Micah. They signed Dante Fowler to a 1-year deal. They drafted Donovan Ezeraku and Marshawn Nealon in back-to-back years in round 2 after already spending a second themselves on Sam Williams. Now, for all of these players, we'll mention the contractual impacts here. It's not actually that expensive. The cap hit for the Cowboys right now is about $1.98 million. The new team would owe $1.55, and that's about your savings as well. That's the cash you're saving if you were to trade away Sam Williams. The problem is he's coming off a torn ACL. I would wonder if, depending on when he's back and healthy, which I think is going to be in time for camp, I'm not actually too concerned about that one, you could see him if he has a great camp and flashes a lot in the preseason. Maybe it seemed like the Commanders could come through and offer you something in terms of it's probably going to be a day 3 pick at best, and that is emphasis on the at best. So what would you do with Sam Williams? T for trade him. K for you're going to keep him, give him 1 more year, and keep that stable of edge rushers stacked and not get too thin. T for trade, K for keep. Go vote at the pinned comment of today's show if the ad comes here on YouTube. Jalen Tolbert is next up here. And again, cool, trade away Mingo. Who wants Jonathan Mingo? Does anyone actually want him? I don't think so. Tolbert has gotten better each season of his NFL career. Now, The bar was pretty low the first 2 years. Can you beat 12 yards? Can you beat 268? Now it's 6'10". And he was actually, I think it was the Sleeper Cowboys account, put out a very accurate meme. No one wanted him as the receiver 2. Like, that's not great. Receiver 3? Okay. Kind of intrigued by that one. Plus Turpin, plus Mingo, Flanoy, Brooks. You can't actually roster, barring injuries, all of those wide receivers. The cap hit for the Cowboys, pretty meager, $3.63 million. Miami Brown got 10, so, it's not a lot of money there. The new team would owe 3.41. I would argue, though, in the end, because you're also still an injury away from being in a bad spot, potentially, especially if you trade away Tolbert in this scenario, that you're better off keeping Tolbert for one more year, potentially getting a comp pick next year, by the way, for him, unless someone like a Mingo really balls out in camp in the preseason, and you're kind of moving Tolbert to free up snaps for other players. That's the scenario in which I would do it, not because you added Pickens. At that point, I would keep him as my number 3. I think everyone who's watched the show knew I was going to put this name on here, and that's Damone Clark, the linebacker. He's fallen out of favor, in a way, kind of with multiple regimes. Like, the Cowboys stopped playing him last year. He played a lot in 2023 because of other injuries, but it's for me, my issue, I think it's the Cowboys' issue too. Instincts still aren't there. Maybe that changes this season, and the lack of splash plays aren't there. DeMarvion Overshown is probably not going to be healthy for week 1. In fact, he's not going to be healthy for week 1. But the Cowboys went out and added Kenneth Murray. They added Jack Sanborn. They bring back Maurice Leofau. They added Shamar James. I would bet that there's a chance all 4 of those guys are actually ahead of Damone Clark in terms of the here's who we're going to play next, given there is, especially in the modern NFL, plenty of positional flexibility beyond Mike and weak side and Will and strong side. Like, it's just, they can kind of play all those spots. I think there's a scenario in which Damone Clark gets out of camp and he's, linebacker 4, with Overshow coming back to be linebacker 5 at that point, and special teams impacts like Justin Barron and Buddy Johnson possibly being ahead of him. Now, the money is maybe the biggest issue here. $3.47 million for Damone Clark, $3.41 for the new team. Again, that's kind of the Cowboys' savings. I think he's clearly on the roster bubble. I don't know if the Cowboys can find a taker at that cap hit. And I wonder if this could be one of those preventative contract restructures where the Cowboys say, Damone, we want to keep you, but not at 3.47. Can we bump you down to 1.5 and guarantee it and keep you around? That, I think, actually could be in play, too.